Hi, this is Dale Rhoda, and I want to talk for a few minutes in this video about the elements or the components of a vaccination coverage indicator. Different organizations, different investigators treat the answers to some of the questions on this slide differently, and it's important to be super clear. It's important to be clear in your coverage reports what were the elements of the indicators that you calculate and that you report. So you're going to want to describe these in an annex, or you're going to want to refer to some other documents that have these definitions in them. And we're going to look today at some documents, some WHO documents that list these for a number of common indicators. These are what I think of as the components of an indicator definition. So we want to list very carefully who's included and excluded, which respondents are in the calculation. How do we calculate the denominator and the numerator? Is this indicator weighted? What are the role of weights? How do they play into it? What do we do with respondents who didn't answer the question or who answered that they don't know the answer to the question? And then when we get to the results, how do we interpret them? Are we drawing a conclusion about the larger population from which the sample was drawn, or are we only talking about the survey sample itself? And how do we use the estimated proportion in a sentence? Should we report the uncertainty due to sampling variability, and if yes, how should we do that? So these are I think some of the fundamental components of an indicator. There are two super helpful documents associated with our vaccination coverage quality indicator software. You don't have to run the software itself to get a lot of use out of these documents. So the results interpretation quick reference guide and the list of indicators and software specifications, they both have the definition, some of these definition components in them. The quick reference guide has a high level overview. It defines the numerator and denominator and talks about weighting. And then if you want to have specifics about how numerators and denominators are calculated in a very specific software specification sense, then the other document is more detailed. Let's just look at a couple of quick examples. The most common vaccination coverage indicator is what we call crude coverage. Is there any evidence at all that the child has been vaccinated? And that is a weighted indicator here in the revised WHO guidelines. It's a weighted indicator in mix. It's a weighted indicator in DHS. The denominator is the sum of the weights. For the WHO indicator, it's the sum of the weights for all respondents. And the numerator is the sum of the weights for respondents who received the vaccine dose that we're looking at, according to whatever sources of evidence we're considering here. Is there evidence either by card or by caregiver recall or by register that the child was vaccinated? We treat missing or do not know responses. They appear in the denominator. Those respondents still appear in the denominator, but in the numerator we treat them as though they were unvaccinated. This is a difference between the WHO indicator and mix. Mix throws them out of the denominator. So this is a subtle difference. And then how do we use it in an English language sentence? Well, we estimate the proportion, and then we say, that many percent of the population who are eligible for the survey dose are estimated to have received it as documented by the sources considered in this survey. And yes, we would report a confidence interval for this indicator. And now let's have a quick look at an unweighted indicator. So dropout is the proportion of kids who received an early dose but did not go on to receive a later dose. So here are some of the components for the WHO dropout indicator that as reported in our Wiki software anyway. It's not a weighted indicator. The denominator is the number of respondents in the survey dataset who received the first dose and were age eligible to receive the second one before the survey was conducted. And the numerator is the number of respondents who did receive that first dose and who were eligible but who did not receive the later dose. The way we would use this in an English sentence is to say, among the N children who showed evidence of having received the earlier dose and who are age eligible to receive the later dose, the estimated proportion, or the calculated proportion, did not show evidence of receiving the later dose. In this case, if they are missing the data for the first dose and for the second dose, then they're excluded from the calculation. If they didn't get the first dose, then they're not part of this calculation. If they're missing the data for the second dose only, if they say they don't know whether they received the later dose or not, then they're counted as unvaccinated for the second dose, and they are in the denominator but not the numerator. And it's traditional in vaccination coverage to report dropout without including a confidence interval. So just to sum up, it's a good idea to be clear about the components of coverage indicators, and when you write your survey reports, you're going to want to include an annex that lists the components for every indicator that you use. Or if you're using standard WHO indicators and you're running standard WHO software, then you can reference those definitions in the documents for Vicky. If you have any questions about this, then it would be good for you to post them in the community update where you found the link to this video, and then your colleagues will benefit from the dialogue that ensues. But if you can't find that, or if you're watching this video after the course has finished, then you can email one of us here. Thanks very much.